We have another panel. I would like you guys to help me welcome Sheila Herrling with the Case Foundation. She is going to introduce our next panel and its moderators. Come on out, Sheila.
Thank you so much. Come on out, my founders. I am Sheila Herrling. I am the Senior Vice President for Social Innovation at the Case Foundation. So proud to be part of a movement that is disrupting and diversifying the state of entrepreneurship. Come on. And so delighted to be here at Essence with this group of change makers, and so excited that Essence brings you all together to have these collisions of ideas and expertise and start something new. And beyond honored to be with this rock star panel of change makers. I'm going to introduce them quickly in order. Their Twitter handles are behind us. You look them up. You want to follow them. Brackeen, he's tech guru and CEO of Kairos, based in Miami. A human analytics platform provides facial recognition and emotion analysis for businesses. Thank you, Brian, for being here.
Thank you.
Kathryn Finney, I call her the intrepid Kathryn Finney. She is managing director of Digital Undivided, based in Atlanta, an incubator and funder of Black and Latina women tech founders. Thank you, Kathryn. And Kristen Sonday, she's based in Chicago, fearless co-founder and COO of Paladin, which is a pro bono marketplace connecting legal expertise with nonprofits. Also super excited, and congratulations on becoming a Code 2040 Google for Entrepreneurs entrepreneur in residence in Chicago. Woo, woo, woo.
Thank you.
And also delighted she is also a winner of the Case Foundation's and Partners Faces of Founders campaign, which is quite literally about changing the default image and narrative of who can be an entrepreneur. So thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you all for being here. Quick showing of our audience. We're going to make you participate. Who in the audience is an entrepreneur? Nice. Keep your hands up. Who in the audience has an idea? They want to start a business. Okay. Now help the investors in the audience, because they never want to raise their hands, because then we all run to them. Who in the audience is an investor? Okay, great. Perfect for us to set our conversation. Quick background before we start. Part of what got us into this space is looking at the data of entrepreneurship, and particularly the data around venture capital, which fuels a lot of the startups in our country. I just want to throw out some stats for folks as we go in. Less than 10% of venture-backed companies have a female founder. Less than 1% have a black founder. Less than 0.2% a black female founder. 75% of venture capital goes to 3 states in the country, 3 of them, leaving the rest to, of the states to fight for 25%. And yet, it's also against the opportunity data of diverse companies outperforming. Some of the portfolio companies who have opened up their portfolios are seeing that women-led companies significantly outperform their counterparts. So against that data, I want us to have a conversation both about the challenges and the opportunities. And I thought we could do it in a fun way. We all know Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
We love this movie. I'm going to put you
Which
guys...
Which one, though?
Second.
The second one, okay.
We are going to put you into being Mythbusters. And so I'm going to throw out a couple of arguments that I hear often in this space. Some are myths, some aren't myths. So we could have a fun conversation around this. So I'm going to ask you to either believe in the argument or bust it. Okay, we ready?
Okay.
All right. The first argument. Talent is equally distributed. Opportunity is not. Brian, you want to kick us off? Are you going to bust it or believe it?
Opportunity is, if you're talking about venture capital as well, it's definitely not equally distributed. I think and capital helps to bring opportunity to a large number of groups, right? You're talking about the different areas, different parts of the country. We're based in Florida. Notoriously difficult place to raise, Series A capital, more than $3, $4, $5 million in capital. We have a lot of angels, a lot of individuals that want to invest $100 grand or $200 grand, but not people that are willing to write $2 million checks, $3 million checks on an idea. Sometimes we see startups in California like the Juice one, that
everywhere in the news.
Basically, it squeezes juice. They raised like $30 million or something like that, and in the end, it wasn't any better than you just grabbing a juice and like just pouring juice into a glass yourself, right? That simply wouldn't be funded in other places, right? And so they got an opportunity that they really didn't deserve because they're in California.
Right. That's right. I mean, you guys want to jump in? I mean, it's
No, I agree. I mean, I think some of the most talented people in the world are black women. Like, we can do surgery in the morning and then go braid hair in the afternoon. Like, we can do a lot of stuff. We are very talented. But what we don't have is we're not part of the networks that give the money. We are excluded from those sort of networks. And so how does investment work? It usually starts, even at the seed level, right? Your first 20,000, your first 5,000, your first 50,000. It starts because either you have a family member who has that money and can give it to you. I don't know about any of you, but if I get $50K from my family, they want it back. They don't just have it to just give it to me. They're going to want to know, when are you going to give me that money back? So it's either from that, or you have friends who have that liquid money that they can give you and not need it back immediately, that they can take that risk. And in our community, we don't have that many people who have access to that sort of risk capital. And that is a challenge for us, because to get started with your idea, you do need a little bit of money. You don't maybe need 100,000 or $1 million, but you probably do need a good 10 to 20K. And if you don't have someone that can get it, or you can't get it yourself, is going to be a barrier for you in terms of building.
Well, it's so great. You raise this issue of social capital, right? Which is how the system works is a lot about finance, of course, right? So one of the other myths that we can then dig into is, I hear an awful lot like, it's just about the financial capital. Just get the money and you're fine, right? Myth busted, believe it, Kristen?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as you alluded to, it's really hard for people of color and women to raise money traditionally through VCs. So I think it is really important to focus on building a sustainable business from the beginning. So in addition to capital, it's really important to find product market fit as soon as you can. It's important to find a team that's well-rounded. It's important to have industry knowledge and build your network within that industry so you can build a sustainable business faster, focus on revenue and profitability, and then the investors will come to you.
Let's continue the conversation a little bit on the idea of social capital, because for me, sort of trying to launch this movement and move forward, you realize very quickly that implicit bias comes in fast. And sometimes it's just how you operate. It's the circles you are in become the circles you both hear ideas from, the kind of people you surround yourself with, and this bleeds through, right, through the investor community. One of the stats I did not throw out was an important one, which is that 93% of investment managers are men. And so let's talk a little bit about, this myth of, it's not even a myth, but this idea of social capital and the circles you run in bleeding down through your investment choices. So how important is it that there's a lack of representation both by women and black and brown communities at the investor level?
Well, I think, I was going to say a bad word, but I'm kind of like blank it with that.
I feel like you could say a bad word. I could say it,
but, we're going to keep it PG here. We have assets in our community that we tend to undervalue. We undervalue the assets that we have. How many of us go to churches that have 1,000+ members? How many of us are part of sororities? How many of us have these networks that we don't utilize? I think crowdfunding and it's a platform is really important to us, because we have people who may not be able to give us 1,500, but could give us 20, that could give us 50, that could give us 100. And if you multiply that by the thousands of people who are in part of some of these networks that we're part of, that is real money. You get to 10,000 really quickly. Case in point, at Digital Undivided, we ran a crowdfunding campaign, a Kickstarter campaign, about 1.5 years ago to raise money to do a documentary. And we thought that we were going to raise like 20K. That was like our goal. We were so excited. If we could do that, we know we made it. We ended up raising 60K in 48 hours. And it was because we asked, and people said to us, we had been waiting, Kathryn, for years for you to ask us for help, and you never asked. We've been waiting as a network. We want to support you. And so I think for us, we have a tendency to undervalue these networks that we're naturally a part of, and we don't ask. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why we don't ask. But as a result, we leave money on the table. We leave access on the table.
But it's one of these difficult situations you get in, Brian. Like, you tell me the story a lot about, sort of you get an investment, and then all of a sudden you're explaining to some of your early investors, like, they're asking, like, well, why do you have to pitch like 100 times, Brian? Like, what's up with you? Other investors are getting it like right off the bat.
Yeah, there's clearly something wrong with the situation, right? Because some of our investors have other investments, maybe 10, 20, 50 other investments, and they're traditionally, kind of white male founders, right? And so you look at all your investments and you say, okay, Bob pitches 5 times and gets his first check. By his 10th or 12th pitch, he's almost done. By his 20th, he is done, right? Mm-hmm. Brian, you pitched 100 times, and you kind of have half the amount of money that Bob does, right? And it's because I've got to be 100 times better than Bob, right? Exactly. And there are also the first 20 or so or 30 could be people that we're never going to invest, period, right? And so I'd love to see some investor education that says, hey, your founders of color and women are going to go through a different experience. Mm-hmm. This is how you support them. You don't need to fix what they're doing necessarily. This is what's going on.
Yeah.
But can I push back on that just a little bit about the investor? Because I feel like we're giving too much power to people who are outside our community without talking about the assets that we already have. And just, being an old head in this space, at some point, we have to stop trying to educate other people and figure out how we're going to do it ourselves. Because it isn't moving. Having been in this space for a lot of years now, it hasn't moved at a rate, and it's going to take us 50 years to get to the point where Brian only has to meet with the 10 people. So what can we do now? What does each of us on here, each of us in the audience, what can we do now to help move things forward? And again, I go back to the networks that we already have. We have money in our communities, and we're not accessing it. We're not utilizing them.
I want to co-sign on that one too really quickly, which is I've started to tell founders, skip the flight to California. Yeah. Just skip it. Because the odds of success you gave the odds.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
That becomes the epicenter of somehow all good things and good founders?
Yeah. Go to New York, go to Atlanta, go to D.C., stay in your own community because that time is wasted time.
Kristen, you look like you want to jump in.
Yes, so a couple things relatedly. I think, more generally speaking, there's also a problem before you even get funding to get into tech to begin with. So Code 2040 recently released a report that said that about 18% of computer science degrees are awarded to Black and Latinx students. But we only represent about 5% of technical talent in the industry. Okay, that math does not add up. So we need to be really intentional about bringing others into the community, into the industry, increasing mentorship, internship opportunities, increasing networks, and making introductions so we can get people into the space at the grassroots level and build our community and our network that way. And then on the flip side, I don't know if there's enough attention given to getting more women and people of color onto the VC side of the equation. People tend to invest in people they know, people who look like them, and that's really hard when you have very few people represented at that top level. So I'd also like to see more increased engagement around training and education to get women and people of color investing.
And even for those of us who won't necessarily be VCs, there's pressure that we could put on. And how we put pressure is I think a lot of us don't know how do VCs get their money. Because VCs, for the most part, are not investing their own money. That's the one thing that a lot of people don't realize. In most venture funds, it's something like maybe 5% is their own money, maybe. So where are they getting the other 90, 95%, sometimes more of the money that's in the fund? And they're getting it from pension funds. And they're getting it from pension funds of big states like California, like New York, and other places. Now, who are the public employees of California and New York? A great majority of the public employees are Black and Latina. A lot of them are our parents, grandparents, some of us in here. And so we have a say in changing that. That's very direct, whether we get into VCs or not, by putting pressure on our pension funds and those who are running our pension funds, and having our parents and our grandparents put pressure on as well and say, hey, have you looked at your pension? Are they investing in people that look like you? Because they're using your money to definitely invest in people who don't look like you. So, and there's a way that we can directly impact without even becoming a VC, which we should. We should definitely do that too.
New myth, which you can bust or believe, that the default image of an entrepreneur is a young white guy in a hoodie.
You said what? Young white boy in a hoodie?
Young white guy in a hoodie.
Oh, okay.
That if you asked anybody to kind of close their eyes, come up with an image of an entrepreneur, say the word entrepreneur, most likely that default image will be a young white guy in a hoodie.
Well, it's a myth, but that might be true that people think that. That's kind of the painful reality of it, I think. And certainly amongst investors, right?
In tech especially.
In tech especially.
Yeah.
If you're not like Mark Zuckerberg with the hoodie on, then you're not doing a tech startup, right?
Right, and I think it has to do a lot with pattern recognition. And again, people like what they're comfortable with. So they have seen over time this pattern of successful entrepreneurs. They get an idea of what that looks like. So what I would like to see is a number of just big successes in our own community, so we start to change the narrative about what success looks like. And I think it's really important that we rally around the Black and brown founders who are doing well and help them push them over the finish line so we can change that narrative.
But we do, and I keep going back to this assets that we have in our community. It's just that our successes are not looked upon by those people who are investors as being success. I mean, you could argue, Oprah is one of the richest women in the world, self-made women in the world. You probably don't get much bigger than her. Candy Burris, who was just on this stage, incredibly successful entrepreneur. Would she be the first person that would come to mind with some of your investors, particularly those who are not of color? Probably not. So we do have those successes, and they are featured, but they're not in Inc. magazine and Fast Company and all these Wall Street Journal, all these other publications, and therefore it's almost like they don't exist. But they do exist. They're just not being brought forward.
That's absolutely right, which is why gatherings like Essence are so important to have this kind of entrepreneurship track. Why Faces of Founders is absolutely trying to get at that question that you receive a lot, right? Which is investors sitting there saying to you, I would love to, fund a woman founded company, but I can't find any, right? It's a pipeline problem. So first get out and solve the pipeline problem, and then I'll invest.
But they're not at Essence Music Festival, right?
Right, and so, what Faces of Founders did is surface the Kristens, Bryans, it is not a pipeline problem, my friends. And here are 18 investable deals for you to, peruse at your leisure.
And you think about Ron Conway is kind of on record on CNN saying, I would love to, but I just can't find any of those people, right?
Right.
So let's.
That's right. But
this narrative of
exactly
us, them, those, that alone is going to keep you from investing, because at the end of the day, you're going to get to a point where the company's interesting. You're going to get to a meeting where there's all these investors get together in a round table, right? You have to have a unanimous vote in almost every case. And there's always going to be one hater, right? There's always going to be one person that just can't get comfortable with the black person's deal, right? And that one person is another reason why you can't get these votes.
Right. This is your session too, so I want to turn it over to you. We've got about 10 minutes or so. I want to end with one sort of lightning round with the panel to close it out. Any questions? There's a mic out there somewhere. Don't be bashful.
Don't be scared.
Awesome.
Hello, everyone. My question is, with the promotion of coding companies right now that are growing in New Orleans, I have a background in business entrepreneurship and a degree in business entrepreneurship. I want to know what someone that comes from that background, how could they possibly get in IT? Because a lot of the coding jobs are jobs, and I want to know how can we change that and make that more into people to learn about entrepreneurship and grow businesses.
So great, and you have the right panel to start answering this. Kathryn, it fits a lot into sort of some of the inspiration behind Digital Undivided.
So I think the first step, well, you took the first step because you're here, right? but it's also being a part of the larger tech community. So there's things called like Startup Weekend, which brings together all sorts of people. You don't have to be a technologist. You don't have to be a coder to go. You can be someone who just has an idea. You could be a marketer. Those jobs are just as important in tech. I know it's been said that, you know, developers and that's sort of the path, but those other jobs are important too. So Startup Weekends and showing up for them, I know they have them in New Orleans. There are some other events that they used to have it, and I'm not sure if it's still going on, but Propeller, which is an incubator, accelerator, ecosystem building program that's based here, has a lot of events. On the national level, you can always come to Atlanta, hang with us at Digital Undivided. But, you know, there's things going on in Miami. There's Black Tech Week Miami that's coming up in October. So there's a lot of places where you could start to get into the community and you could start to interact. And it's from those that you'll meet other people who will let you know other things that are going on.
Right, which is such a great part about the accelerator space is that you, or coding camp, or any of these, even common workspaces, is that you are feeding off of the others in there. Kristen, do you want to talk just a little bit about Code 2040? Because that's also quite relevant to the question. And that gives you guys time to think of your next question.
Hi, my name is Shambria, and I'm from California. I think when I think about entrepreneurship, I think in the Black community, it's not really pushed as much as it should be. And I have an idea to start a nonprofit, getting kids involved into being and more involved in being in entrepreneurship. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that. How can we incorporate this in schools? How can we do think tanks at young age? Because I think that it's something that should be pushed forward.
Love it, love it.
I can speak to that in relation to 2040 as well. So generally speaking, Code 2040 is an organization, part of Google for Entrepreneurs, that promotes and supports diversity in tech. So as the entrepreneur in residence at 1871 in Chicago, I think a lot about this question. And I think there are two main tenets to getting students involved and aware of tech opportunities. The first is exposure. So bringing in people who look like them, who have been in the industry, to make them feel confident and comfortable with the fact that they can succeed in technology and startups and entrepreneurship and share their experiences. The second piece is education. So educating students on what opportunities are even out there. You know, tech doesn't mean engineering. And if it meant that, then I would not be in tech. But it also, you know, there are so many different opportunities within the technology space and startups and entrepreneurship. And number two, teaching students what it takes to get into those roles. So what are the opportunities that are local, the code camps, marketing, design, sales, biz dev. There are so many different facets of it, and connecting them with local resources, I think, are really important to encouraging their path into startups and entrepreneurship.
Can I ask you a personal question? How old are you? Do you mind saying? 30. So why a nonprofit and why not a company that you start yourself? And so the reason why I ask that is that's something that when I speak and come to events, and a lot of times I hear from Black women, we say, oh, I want to do a nonprofit. I want to do something for the kids. Now, as a mom, I love that, right? Because I want my kids to be hooked up. But I also wonder why we're not asking, how can I start a company myself?
So I'm also a graduate student at USC.
Yeah.
And my major is community organization and business innovation. Yeah. And so the reason why I chose a nonprofit is because people have this stigma around nonprofits. You can still financially make money in a nonprofit. Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, you want to, tread lightly. However, I just felt like attaching a business to it might just be a little eerie.
Well, I would suggest you look into things like hybrid models. Making money and I, again, ask that question because it gets a little bit deeper to us about we have issues around making money in our community. We really do, right? Money is complicated for us. We don't know how to make it. When we make it, we feel guilty for making it. It's all this stuff attached to it. And so there's nothing wrong with figuring out how to make money doing things like social services. There are a number of organizations right now who are for-profit companies that are making money off of things like Medicaid and Medicare and things that impact our community. They are not nonprofits. They're using debit cards for Medicaid patients and things like that. And I often wonder, why aren't we doing that? We're the ones that are a part of these sort of communities. We're the ones that have these ideas and have deep experiences with those social enterprises or social things.
I think it's a lack of resources and a lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
Especially, I know in my community in California, it's not pushed enough.
Yep.
And then on top of that, we don't really have access to those people who are doing it. Social learning theory teaches us that you learn by watching someone physically do it. And the thing is that in most black families, we don't have very many entrepreneurs, or maybe they're not labeled that or considered that, but they are in their own right. So I think it just, how do we bring that access back into our communities that's lacking, greatly?
Yeah, could not agree more. Could not agree more. And the language around it is also complicated, right? The big word entrepreneurship, what is that, right? It's hard to identify sometimes with that word, and yet,
Well, it's become a dirty word.
Entrepreneurs.
In our community, you say you're an entrepreneur when you don't have a job. That's been sort of the thing. My cousin's an entrepreneur. Oh, he ain't got a job. So it's become this sort of dirty word for us. And how do we take back that word? And how do we make it into what it really is?
I really hope you pursue that idea. And I think there are ways nonprofit are alike, and we're here to talk after. So help think that through. I think we have time for one more question. I'm going to ask one lightning round. Where are we? Up front. I recognize you.
My name is Sheila Donaldson, and I am the founder of a lingerie startup Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? Hi. My name is Sheila Donaldson, and I'm the founder of a lingerie startup for women of every skin tone. My question to the panel, or what I would like you to address, as someone who was a former investment banker and specialized in tech, I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, minority entrepreneurs, be they women, people of color, or both, are in a space that are non-tech companies. And a lot of venture capital investment is really targeted towards tech companies. And whether you're talking about Oprah, or if you're talking about Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, I forget, Sophia Amoroso, the founder of Nasty Gal. These are all areas, Natalie Massenet, who also founded Net-a-Porter. These are all areas or companies that are not necessarily considered tech companies. And I believe that financing of companies that are non-tech companies, that it's even more difficult, because to me, most of the funds that are out there, whether they're angels, some kind of angel organization, or different more advanced rounds of capital, they don't really focus or give a chance to entrepreneurs who are non-tech companies.
First, Sheila, since you named a bunch of other companies, and you do have the mic, you should name your company.
Thank you.
So say that out loud before we go to the panel.
My company is called Nudes.
Awesome.
I would actually push back on that because Warby Parker, Bonobos, the dudes who do pants, the juice company, Casper, all of these companies raise money from traditional venture capitalists who invest in tech. So everything is tech. Everything is tech. The challenge that we often see at Digital Undivided, and also as a part of the Harriet Fund, is that our ideas are not often big enough. So it's not scalable. They're not high growth. Yeah. We're not thinking in that way. So we come in and we're like, I have an idea to make $1 million. I'm like, well, as a VC, I'm sorry, I'm not really interested in that company. VC math doesn't allow me to make money if you only make $1 million. But if you come in and you say, hey, I'm going to make $100 million, or I'm going to make $1 billion, then hey, now I can see how I can make money.
And I agree with that. The examples that you cited, Bonobos, for example, those are e-commerce companies, so there is some tech aspect to them. But I think also still you're facing a different bar because you're talking about a company with white male founders.
Yes.
So you have to take all of the pieces together. Yeah. So on top of it, when you're talking about a female, minority-owned, non-tech, or you could kind of call me a tech company because I'm an e-commerce-based business.
You're a tech company. Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just another hurdle that you have to get over, because the mechanism in which I sell and distribute my product is through e-commerce, but in the end, I am a lingerie brand and manufacturer.
Yeah.
So, trying to explain that story and get it across, and I think someone on the panel mentioned earlier, because the industry is so dominated by men, getting them to see and understand the scalability of a product that is targeting mostly women.
That's right.
And to understand how much it can grow is also quite difficult at times.
No, that's totally right, and we talk about that a lot. You guys off stage, which is this notion of, because of who's investing, there's markets that are unseen to them, right? They couldn't imagine that this is a profitable market, that it's scaling to the kinds of numbers that venture capital needs. And yet they are, right? Which is this idea of how to expose more of these companies to get more on the radar screen success out there, so that the stories are out there, so that it is not such a layer on layer on layer.
I would love to see more stories about the no's, not just the yeses, right?
Yeah.
Because the no's would tell you, you know what, look at the numbers, look at your business, for instance, and these are the comps to your business. And based on that, this person got funding and these people didn't, but your numbers are better than those folks, right? So I think that'd be very, very helpful.
It's great. We've got one last question, lightning round, before we get kicked off the stage. Very quickly, we'll start with Kristen and come back. What is the best advice you were ever given?
The best advice I've been given is to take the meeting. What that means is, and I'm terrible at saying no, so that's a pro and a con, but I always say yes and take the meeting and have the conversation or the coffee or the email correspondence, because you never know who you're going to meet. And this could be a great ally longer term. It could be someone that helps your business or someone that you help and end up mentoring long term. But yeah, because of that and because of you never know where the conversation is going to lead, I say take the meeting.
Yeah. Kathryn?
Oh, God. It would be do you. Because at the end of the day, you have to be with you. You have to be pleased with yourself. And so be who you are and be firm in that and be comfortable in that. And if that's not good enough for them, F them.
You're getting closer
Getting
every
closer.
time. She's almost there.
I'm almost there.
Brian?
Mine would definitely be the never give up. I think that's probably one of the first things I heard along the way. And for sure, there's been time after time where it gets really, really tough, but I just never even consider quitting. And that's why I think we're ultimately successful as a company.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank this panel of just outrageously awesome change makers. Let's go forth. We're all part of this ecosystem of growing more diverse entrepreneurs, putting them out in the world. So let's go forth and be the change we want to see in the world. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.